Hey y'all, and welcome back to another Wedding Wednesday. My name is Jane Corley with Pic Visions, Media Arts and Photography. If it's your first time here, welcome. Every Wednesday we go over tips, tools, and techniques in order to help you plan your wedding. In today's episode, it's all about pre-wedding parties. What type of parties to have, how many parties to have, who to invite, all that good stuff. So let's get started with pre-wedding parties. First and foremost is your engagement party. Your engagement party should happen between the first 3 months of your engagement process. It's going to be a party with all your friends and anybody who can make it to come together and just really celebrate the couple and celebrate the engagement and gets everybody in the vibe and in the mood to get married and start planning a wedding. Invites should be sent out a month in advance, and doing online RSVPs is a wonderful idea. Since it isn't a formal affair, it's just kind of more of a drop-in and everybody come in and help celebrate and have a good time. It's totally fine to, kind of throw tradition away a little bit and just do online RSVPs to help you get sort of account for who's in. Do understand that engagement parties are not necessary events. If you don't want to have one, then don't have one. If you want to have one and you're willing to put something together, or you know somebody who is willing to put something together, just don't make it another burden in the process if it's not really something that you want to do. Next is who should host the other parties and how should those parties hosts be sort of organized. After your engagement party or after kind of talking to a few people, you should know, one or two people at least who probably want to throw you a party. And that's a really great start. So start finding weekends that you may have available. Start talking to these potential hosts. Start talking to these brides and find out what is a day that is going to work for both of you early. Because if you can get something on the books early, that's just going to streamline the whole engagement process and everybody's going to be able to stay in line because something is already scheduled. So these events should start kind of happening between 3 and 4 months prior to the wedding. And please do not schedule an event within the last 14 days of an engagement period, even up to a month before the wedding day. It will take a little bit of stress off the bride because even though, yay, we're all excited to have a little party and celebrate my new groom or my new bride, but it gets to the point where everything is getting down to the wire and it's just like one more thing. And if you really just want to give a treat to your bride, a month before the wedding, just take them out to lunch with a few of your girlfriends and, just have a quiet unplug from everything wedding sort of lunch and check in and make sure everything's good. And do it that way, a little bit more intimate, not a big party sort of thing. Anybody and everybody can host these parties. So if your friends, your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, your mom, your stepmom, your great grandmother, whoever wants to host one of these parties, that is totally fine. But do not overload a bride with too many parties. Make sure that if it's two aunts that want to have a party, they can maybe have a joint party and, everybody can kind of come together if they live in the same local area. So just be smart with the amount of parties you have, and having somewhere like 3 to 5 parties during an engagement period with an engagement party with your bachelorette party and maybe a bridal luncheon, I would say is the most. I wouldn't do anything. I personally would not be able to mentally handle that. The family of the bride and the family of the groom traditionally do not host pre-parties, and that's only because they're already investing so much time, energy, and money into the wedding. But that doesn't mean they can't help with any sort of pre-wedding parties. They can host it at their house. They can, help with the catering bill. They can pay for, a few beverages. They can bring the napkins and plates. Whatever they would want to help with or be able to help with, that's totally fine, but traditionally they don't host bridal showers. So bride and grooms do not agree to have more than 2 parties a month. Do not do it to yourself. You'll thank me later. Just don't do it. It's going to be miserable. Just try to space them out. I would suggest maybe if you're going to have 3 or 4 parties, have it 4 months before your event, 3 months before your event, 2 months before your event, and 1 month before your event, just to kind of keep things spaced out and break up the month of engagement planning process and just have them spaced out just for your own mental stability. I guarantee you, you'll thank me later. especially if you are traveling, to an event. So if you're going back home to Colorado and the people back home want to have a party for you, have that on the calendar sooner rather than later. Do not shotgun that party. Don't force it. Don't try to make it happen. It's not going to be successful. How to invite guests. Guests should be invited 4 to 5 weeks prior to the event, with an RSVP date 2 weeks prior to the event to 1 week prior to the event, just to make sure that everybody has enough food and there's going to be enough space, there's going to be enough beverages, everything's going to be good, and that'll just take a little bit of stress off the host. Your date, time, location, name of the hostess, name of the bride and groom, of course. If it's a surprise event or the bride explicitly doesn't want you to bring gifts, just any of that information, have it on your invitation. You should also have information for where the bride and groom are registered, and you should have information to the bride and groom's website. Showers typically last between 2 and 4 hours, and do take into account guests will probably start arriving about 30 to 45 minutes early to the event. To RSVP, simply put a phone number or an email address that guests can RSVP to, as well as if you want to include, an envelope with a stamp on it to send out to the guests to RSVP as well. Just whatever you feel like doing, there are options out there. Lastly, on your invitation, just if you're having a themed event or if special attire is needed, if it's going to be more of a formal affair, or definitely just more casual, just any kind of attire suggestions that your guests can use. So let's talk about guest count. Unless you are having a party for out-of-town guests that can't make it to the wedding because they live halfway across the United States or wherever, the only reason why you should have more than 50 guests at a wedding shower is that reason. Any other reason, have another party. There's no reason to have guests over 50, maybe even pushing 75 people at a bridal shower. The reason I say have 2 parties is because people come to showers to get more face time than they're going to get on the wedding day. And if you're having 50 people where you could have had 2 20 people parties, you're going to get more face time with your guests. Your host is going to get a little bit more manageable of a situation. Just make sure to break it up, but don't break them up so much that you have 10 parties to go to in 2 months. It's just not going to work. And during these parties, some of these people may not be able to attend or weren't invited to the wedding. So the bride or the groom want to have that face time that they may not get with that guest on the wedding day. Traditional showers include brunch, lunch, afternoon tea, maybe a coffee event, and there are different kinds of themed parties. You can do, of course, beach theme, nautical theme, any kind of theme you think is appropriate for the bride or for the groom, as well as lingerie parties, as well as kitchen parties, as well as, mix and mingle with a little bit of food, maybe some desserts, gifts, and speeches. That's totally fine as well. So just make the party your own. It doesn't have to follow any kind of cookie cutter design, but just keep in mind what you think the bride or the groom would like during this party. And don't make it something that's going to be really uncomfortable for the bride or for the groom. And make sure it matches their vibe, matches their theme. And speaking of theme, the theme of the party does not have to match the theme of the wedding. It can actually be contrary to the theme of the wedding, which kind of gives a nice little juxtaposition during a wedding shower. Now with gifts, someone needs to be there to help the bride out, to record the gifts, who gave it to them, and what the item is and at what function. Then that might be easy, but make sure that they annotate that information down and keep charge of any sort of monetary gifts. So you don't want your bride throwing around checks from guests. You want to be able to, here's an envelope with all of your financial gifts in it, just so you don't lose it. And that's a really, really great job for a bridesmaid, or if a groomsman is there because it's a couple's party, that's a really great job for them. They just really need to be attentive to the bride and attentive to what they can do to help the host as a member of the wedding party, kind of just be like little worker bees in the background. So let's get on to games. If you're going to have games at your wedding showers, that's totally awesome. It's actually really, really fun. We had a few at ours and they were really, really fun. It was really great to participate with all the people in our life and really just see how well they knew me and, things that they wanted to pass on to me, like old recipes that, were part of our family and things like that. But there are a lot of really awesome games you can find online. Brides and bridal shower planners before you have done a phenomenal job at being so creative at some really, really fun games. So take a look at those. I'll leave a link in the description box below to find some really good games for your wedding shower. Now let's talk about bridal luncheon. What is a bridal luncheon? It's not something that is definitely necessary, but it's really, really nice to have. A bridal luncheon should happen somewhere within the last week of your wedding planning. And it can be paired with the day you go get your manicures and pedicures. It can be paired with maybe a spa day where you go get exfoliant masks or something with your friends. It can also just be a day that you need a break. And it's typically hosted by maybe the bride. It can be hosted by the maid of honor. It can be hosted by the mother of the bride, the mother of the groom, an aunt, anything like that. Any person that is very intimately close with the bride. The reason being is because this is the point in time where the bride gives thanks to the women in her life. It is a small, intimate affair, usually no more than about 20 people. It's going to be all your bridesmaids. It's going to be your flower girl. It's going to be the mother of the bride, the mother of the groom. It may be a select few aunts and grandmothers, but that's really it. It needs to be a very intimate affair because it's the bride giving thanks. And this is a point in time where, anybody who wants to give speeches, or the bride herself can give a speech, the bride can give gifts, they can, just really celebrate what we're about to do and really just be surrounded by the powerful women in her life. This is probably one of the last times that the bride is going to have to just really relax and be together with all of these women before the big day. And don't get it twisted, grooms can have luncheons too. They can have a barbecue luncheon or, steaks at the club or whatever they want to have as a groom's luncheon. That is totally fine to have. Brides are not the only one that get to have the fun on the luncheons the week before the wedding. Now, these last two events I will talk about very, very briefly with just a few cliff notes because I'm going to have a whole video on it later on down the road. First is your bachelorette party. Your bachelorette party should happen 2 to 4 weeks before your wedding day. And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of things that happen in the last 14 days of your wedding. And you can even push it to maybe 7 days to your wedding and earlier, but I wouldn't put it within the week of your wedding if you can help it. And that's because hangovers look good on nobody, and you don't want bags under your eyes because you had a little too much fun, and you don't want any, scars or bruises you may incur on your bachelorette party to get in the way of things. A really, really good friend of mine, his bachelor party, they did the weekend of the wedding, pretty much the night before. I think it was like 72 hours before. But he had a huge scratch from just roughhousing. Even before they left the house, he got a huge cut on his forehead, and he had that for his wedding. So just be mindful of that. So go ahead and schedule as much as you can early for your bachelorette party. If you can go ahead and get a date on the calendar within 2 months to a month before the wedding, that way you can just, if you got to save money, you'll save money for that. If you need to put any kind of travel expenses or any kind of preparations for that kind of to the side, you can go ahead and plan those things. Anybody who wants to be involved can be involved because they'll have tons of time to plan for it. So, as soon as you get your engagement down, go ahead and start looking at your calendar for when we can have our bachelorette party, and then we'll put all our other showers before that sort of thing. The maid of honor and the best man should be the ones to plan this event with the help of the other bridesmaids and groomsmen. This is a great opportunity for them to come together as a group and really just work together and come out with a really good plan. As a bride or a groom, do make sure to get your list of people you want to invite to this occasion. If you're having an overnight sort of thing, who you want to stay overnight sort of thing. And if you are hosting it at your home, do make sure to include, if anybody needs to bring anything or do anything in preparation for it, that they are prepared to do that. Now, it is totally fine to ask the bridesmaids or the groomsmen during the event to help pay for what the host is providing. If you're going out to eat, you can either split a bill or everybody, takes turns taking care of the bride's bill, just to make sure that the whole financial burden isn't on one person and they're not having to do that. That's the stressful part of it, guys. So that's what I'll say about Bachelor, Bachelorette parties for now. More on it to coming up later. Next is rehearsal dinner, and I'm gonna have a whole video about it later on, so I'll just kind of give you the cliff notes on this one as well. But the rehearsal dinner is typically planned by the groom's parents. It can be anywhere from 24 hours before the wedding to 48 hours before the wedding. So in the last 2 days, this is when your rehearsal dinner typically takes place. It's also probably going to be on the night that the rehearsal actually takes place. It's going to be maybe a plated dinner or a seated dinner. You can have people over at your house, whatever the groom's parents are comfortable with doing. And if the bride's parents are willing to help pay for it, that's also totally fine. If friends and other family members are willing to help host, that's also totally fine. But it is the main job of the groom's family to plan the rehearsal dinner. The rehearsal dinner is a great time for the family members to meet if they haven't done so already, or just really to get everybody in the same place at one time. So all of the groom's immediate family, all of the bride's immediate family, all of the wedding party and their plus ones, any sort of out-of-town guests that are very, very close to the family should also be invited, and it is totally fine to have a no kids rehearsal dinner if that's something that will maybe financially help the groom's family out, as well as just not have any kids at a rehearsal dinner, based on what kind of party you're wanting to throw. Rehearsal dinners are also a really great place for anybody who is not giving a speech at the wedding to give a speech. Just find time, maybe after people are done eating, or as if people are wrapping up before everybody starts mixing and mingling and then leaving. That's also a really great place to have speeches as well of people who aren't going to be giving speeches at the wedding. Slideshows are really great for rehearsal dinners, so if you want to have one of those, just make sure to start accumulating those embarrassing pictures to include in your slideshows. Invitations for the rehearsal dinner should be sent out 4 weeks and earlier for the event. This will give enough time for any kind of catering, any kind of seating charts information, and just give the hosts as much information as they possibly can as soon as they can. RSVP deadline should be 2 weeks prior to the event at the very, very latest. This makes sure that any late RSVPs come in, you have kind of a little bit of a wiggle room, but you want to have a good idea about how many people are coming to the rehearsal dinner about 2 weeks before the event. No matter how many wedding parties you're having or hosting or planning to have, make sure to be clear with the bride and the groom on their schedules. Make sure that you plan as far enough in advance and you don't try to force a party at the last minute. It's better just not to have one, because it just shouldn't feel forced, and it should be well planned in advance. And if you're a bride or a groom, make sure to be transparent with the bridal shower hosts who will be hosting these parties for you. Any dates that you prefer, any menu items you prefer, any guest lists you prefer, and any sort of timeline or time frame that you would prefer over another. So I do hope this video was helpful on how to plan and prepare for pre-wedding parties. Make sure to like this video if you learned something new, subscribe and ring the bell if you have not done so already so you don't miss any videos every Wednesday on tips, tools, and techniques in order to plan a wedding. If you have any comments on this video, please leave it in the comment section below. Any tips or tricks you have for me about how we can improve our videos, and any information that you would like to see on this channel. I'm Jane Corley with Pick Visions, Media Arts and Photography. See you later, guys.